Bahrain and Qatar have very similar looking flags, which raises the obvious question, why is it like this? So the answer is that it's not completely coincidence. In fact, the story goes all the way back to 19th century. And in those days, the present day seven emirates of the UAE and Bahrain and Qatar were all separate states. Now, in those days, piracy by local Arabs was a big issue and it was common. So, to prevent it, the British signed the General Maritime Treaty of 1820 with six emirates that later became known as the UAE. Okay, six, you will ask why? Well, at that point, Fujairah was not recognized as a separate emirate. Okay, it was considered part of these emirates. Now, after this truce was signed, these states became known as the Trucial states, and soon Bahrain joined them, and so did Qatar. Now, there was a clause in this treaty which said that all the states that signed this agreement have to use a red flag with white borders to distinguish them from the plain red flags of other Arab rulers. The latter often engaged in piracy. The point was, if the British saw a ship flying a full red flag, they would be like, okay, these are pirates. But if there's a white border, then they will be like, oh, okay, no need to worry. These are our allies, our friends. Now, here's the thing. At that point, now there are seven states of UAE, right? But at that point, there were six. Fujairah wasn't there. So what happened was these were the versions that the present day UAE Emirates used. Abu Dhabi had this version, Ajman and Dubai used the same flag, Ras Al Khaimah and Sharjah used the same flag, and Al Quwain used a different version. Okay. Now Fujairah actually continued using the red flag, but in 1975 they just abolished it and replaced it with the UAE flag. So it's like the only emirate out of those seven emirates today that doesn't really have its own flag. They just fly the national flag. That's some side info for you. Now, Qatar was actually the last state to join this agreement and thus becoming the ninth, quote, reconciled emirate, as they were called. Now, both Qatar and Bahrain had to modify their red flags with a white stripe as per British instructions. So, Bahrain modified its flag multiple times actually. So first the flag used to have 28 white points. Those were, reduced to 8 and eventually to 5 because 5 is symbolic. The public is Muslim and 5 is for the 5 pillars of Islam. Now, Qatar has a much more interesting story. So for this we have to go back all the way to Amir Muhammad bin Sani of Qatar. What happened was that this guy basically proposed a purple colored flag for his country. He said, well, historically, purple dye was important source of income for us during the Kassite and Sassanid eras. The British insisted that no, you have to use the red one like our agreement states. But what Qatar did was they used a mixture of red and purple dyes. And letters from the British political agent in the Persian Gulf tell us, those that was sent to British India, they say that the white cloth which they purchased for flag was from Bahrain originally, and they would dye it locally red. But the dye was so bad quality that it eventually faded into maroon after exposure to sunlight. And because of this, in 1936, the flag was officially made maroon. But later, the Amir ended up adding the country's name in Arabic on the flag along with some, diamond symbols. And he flipped it. So now the white stripe, instead of being to the left, was now placed to the right. But then in 1960, the Amir ended up removing the Arabic text and diamonds, and the white stripe was again flipped to the left. And there are nine white triangles, white points, and they are also symbolic, but in this case, they represent Qatar's position as the ninth reconciled emirate. Hopefully, this video was helpful, and thank you for watching.